In the spring of 1989, Beijing, the capital of the People's Republic of China, became the stage for a massive democratic movement. It began with students, young people demanding reforms, freedom of speech, and an end to corruption, but soon swelled into a broader coalition of workers, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens. The gathering spot was Tiananmen Square, a vast public plaza at the heart of Beijing, flanked by the Forbidden City and the monument to the people's heroes. For weeks, the square filled with tents, banners, hunger strikes, and chants for change. Inspired by global winds of reform, the fall of dictatorship in Eastern Europe, the spread of democracy in Asia, the protesters believed their moment had come. At its height, over 1 million people flooded the streets of Beijing. The government of Deng Xiaoping, however, saw the protests as a threat to Communist Party control. After weeks of failed negotiations, on June 3 and 4, the Chinese military was ordered to clear the square by force. The crackdown. The night of June 3 bled into the morning of June 4. Tanks rolled in, accompanied by heavily armed soldiers. Live rounds were fired into crowds. Barricades of students and workers, built from buses and makeshift materials, were crushed. The air filled with smoke, gunfire, and screams. Estimates of the death toll vary, since the Chinese government never released an official figure. At the time, the Red Cross suggested around 2,600 deaths, while other sources suggested several hundred. What is certain is that it was a massacre. Blood stained the streets, and the square, once alive with hope, fell silent. By dawn on June 5, the military had asserted control over central Beijing. Soldiers and tanks patrolled the streets, intimidating anyone who dared resist. The city felt broken. And then, in the midst of this atmosphere of fear and violence, one anonymous man stepped out to challenge the world's mightiest machine of repression. The stand on Chang'an Avenue. On the wide Chang'an Avenue, near Tiananmen Square, a column of Type 59 tanks rolled forward, engines growling. Leading the column was a single tank, its gun barrel facing straight ahead. Suddenly, a lone man in a white shirt, black trousers, and carrying 2 shopping bags stepped into the street. He raised his hand, signaling for the tanks to stop. And astonishingly, they did. What followed was one of the most remarkable standoffs ever caught on film. The lead tank tried to swerve around him, but the man moved again, blocking its way. It swerved the other way, and again he stepped in front. It became almost like a dance, a fragile human figure refusing to yield before tons of steel. For a moment, the sheer absurdity and courage of it stunned everyone watching. Onlookers gasped, unsure if the man would be shot or crushed. But the tanks held their fire. Climbing the tank. At one point, the man did something even bolder. He climbed onto the lead tank. He appeared to speak to the soldiers inside, perhaps pleading with them, perhaps demanding they turn back. His exact words remain unknown. No audio survives. Eyewitnesses later speculated he was saying something like, "Why are you here? Why are you doing this to our people?" The soldiers stayed silent, their orders clear but their humanity perhaps stirred by this ordinary citizen who refused to move. After climbing down, the man resumed his place in front of the column. For several long minutes, the world watched this surreal standoff. The man against the machine. The individual against the state. Finally, 2 figures, possibly plainclothes police, possibly friends from the crowd, rushed forward, grabbed the man, and led him away. His fate from that moment remains a mystery. Who was Tank Man? The identity of Tank Man, also called the Unknown Rebel, has never been confirmed. Over the years, various rumors circulated. Some reports claimed he was a student. Others suggested he was a worker, perhaps from a nearby neighborhood. A few named him as Wang Weilan, a 19-year-old student, but Chinese authorities later denied this, and evidence never surfaced. His fate is equally mysterious. Some rumors claimed he was executed soon after. Others believed he slipped back into obscurity, his identity never revealed even to friends. Chinese officials, when pressed, gave evasive answers. Some suggested he was never punished, others implied he was arrested. The truth remains hidden. What is clear is that the Chinese state has gone to great lengths to erase Tank Man from history. Within China, images of him are censored, mentions scrubbed from textbooks, and online searches heavily controlled. To millions of Chinese citizens born after 1989, the photo of one man blocking tanks is entirely unknown. The power of the image. Though the man himself vanished, the image did not. International journalists who stayed behind risked their lives to capture the moment. Jeff Whittier of the Associated Press, Charlie Cole of Newsweek, and Stuart Franklin of Magnum Photos were among those who immortalized the standoff. Their photos were smuggled out of Beijing, and within days they appeared on front pages across the globe. The sight of one ordinary man halting a line of tanks became an instant icon of resistance. The photograph has since been called one of the most important images of the 20th century. Time magazine named it among the 100 most influential photographs ever taken. Global reaction. The massacre and Tank Man's image shook the world. Governments condemned the violence. The United States and European nations imposed economic sanctions on China. Human rights groups demanded accountability. But within China, the government doubled down. The Communist Party declared the protests a counter-revolutionary riot and maintained strict control of the narrative. Families of victims were silenced, journalists expelled, and memory of the protests became taboo. Yet the image of Tank Man slipped through borders and censorship, becoming a universal symbol. For dissidents in Eastern Europe, for protesters in the Middle East, for democracy activists worldwide, Tank Man stood as proof that one person's courage can shake the conscience of the world. The lasting legacy. Today, more than 3 decades later, Tank Man remains a paradox, both anonymous and immortal. His face and name are unknown, but his act is unforgettable. He represents the power of ordinary people to confront injustice. The fragility of authoritarian power, exposed by a single act of defiance. The silence of erased history, where China still refuses to acknowledge him. Every June, when the anniversary of Tiananmen Square comes around, Tank Man resurfaces outside China, on posters, in vigils, in social media campaigns, as a reminder of both what happened and what was suppressed. We may never know who Tank Man was. We may never learn what became of him after those few defiant minutes on June 5, 1989. But perhaps that is what gives his act its enduring power. He could have been anyone, a student, a worker, a father, a son. His anonymity makes him universal. He reminds us that courage is not reserved for generals or presidents. It can belong to the ordinary man in a white shirt carrying groceries. And so, while tanks may roll and regimes may silence, the image of Tank Man remains uncrushed. It endures as one of the greatest symbols of the human spirit, one man, standing tall, refusing to move. Thanks everyone for watching. Please consider subscribing and see you soon.